Hello and welcome to Out of the Fog. I'm Lynn Hammond. Tonight my guest is Bev Evans with Knightsbridge, Robertson, Surrette. And we'll be talking about employment, workforce, hiring, and all things job opportunities. Join us after these messages.
You know the feeling you get when you find your soulmate.
Soulmates are hard to miss.
February is Loveuary on W Network with all new movies inspired by love. Every Saturday night in Loveuary, including the continuation of the Wedding Veil trilogy that will sweep you off your feet.
Sono ora a passeggiare insieme a me.
More Italian.
Hallmark Channel's Loveuary. Back-to-back movies every weekend, only on W.
You're watching Rogers TV St. John's.
We're back with Bev Evans of Knightsbridge, Robertson, Surrette. I am so glad to see you. This is the one good thing about Out of the Fog on Friday afternoons. I get to hang out with friends that I don't get to see because of COVID.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to having another chat with you. And the only thing that's missing, as I just joked, was our glass of wine, but that's okay. We'll pretend there's one here.
Yeah, but I mean, it is so great, you know, when the opportunities come up to be able to get out and see your colleagues and friends again. And I know we're all looking for it, but I can only imagine in your role, you know, with all that's been going on, you know, in employment and workforce changes, you know, as one of the, well, as partner of, I guess it's probably the largest kind of employment recruitment company in Atlantic Canada, right? I mean, you must...
I think we're one of the largest.
Yeah, so I mean, but just, you know, incredible amount of change and work that must have been going on in the last 2 years.
Absolutely. I haven't had time to learn how to bake bread or to do anything interesting, but I've certainly eaten lots of bread, so it's...
well, haven't we all?
That counts, that counts. But it's been an interesting time in our industry. In the marketplace, I've never seen it in my career, in my different roles. So it definitely is one for the books, and I don't see it ending anytime soon.
And so when we talk to people about recruitment, you know, as you know, a company that helps other companies attract the employees that they need, right? What was the career path that brought you to this point?
Interesting, because as you know, I am an FCPA, and so I joke that, see, accountants can do anything, so you have to have a sense of humor. I actually have been interested in HR and people throughout my whole career. Even when I was a cold, cruel chief financial officer, I believe people are important, and I believe that people, the whole person, needs to be cared for and looked at. And that ultimately results in profitability for any organization. So I think I was a little bit of an anomaly in finance roles. And when I decided to look for a new job, I wasn't looking to change my career. A number of recruitment firms said, have you ever considered doing this for a living? And I said, no, find me a job in what I do. And I took a chance, and I decided to take a chance with KBRS. And I said, I'll give it 3 months. Let's see what happens. I mean, you know, give something new. And it's been 8 years now. So I really enjoy what I do. And it sounds a little bit cheesy, but I enjoy working with people and finding their dream role and what they do. And I enjoy seeing companies prosper because they've got the right person there. So I take it very seriously.
You do,
and I'm very passionate about it. So.
And you know, I mean, I think that that's something that is really being talked about right now. People are taking a step back, and you know, people early in career, late in career, mid-career, and saying, is this what I want to do? Is this my dream job? You know, or, you know, perhaps they're halfway through and they're saying, you know what, I've got 10 more years to work or 20 more years to work. Do I want to try something different? And so we're hearing it called the giant resignation, or the big churn.
Yeah.
And But is it happening here? Like, is it happening here in Newfoundland? Is it real in Atlantic Canada?
Yes, it is happening here. It is real in Atlantic Canada. It's real in Newfoundland and Labrador. Certain industries or certain job classifications, we're seeing faster turnover. But our demographics helps actually make the churn happen a little bit more and faster. In Atlantic Canada, I think the last stats I saw, for every 3 people retiring, we've got 1 person coming up. That changes the economic supply and demand equation. The latest research, because you can tell I'm passionate about this, I researched I researched this stuff. Yeah. I think 88% of individuals are open and looking for, am I in the right place, or it's changed what they're thinking, the pandemic. And a lot of the stats that are coming out are post-pandemic, which we aren't here yet.
Right.
Forecasted 20% turnover, 40% turnover. That's happening. I think I mentioned to you the other day, there's an 87% increase year over year in job postings in Newfoundland and Labrador.
I believe it.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. I have never seen.
That may not be the right word,
but it's interesting jobs and different jobs potentially than some of what we've seen before.
Absolutely.
You know, with the tech industry booming, you know, with people now able to do remote work and hybrid work. Some of the things that we're seeing now are opportunities that might not have been available before.
Absolutely. And I think that you hit the nail on the head. People are retiring. Some of this was forecasted, whether or not organizations were prepared for it or not, that's a different story. But so much more is happening because now people are looking, is this bringing me what I want in my life?
Yes.
Do the values written on the wall in all these organizations align with the actions of the leaders and what's happening? And there's some real internal soul searching happening. So we're seeing more people interested and open to talk to us, but we're also seeing opportunities that wouldn't have been open 5 years ago. And we're talking to companies that have never used external recruiters before, and they're just saying, help, like, let's see what we can do. So it is a very changed market.
And so employers, companies, you know, they also have to be considering this and thinking about retention. You know, what do we do to hold on to the good people that we have? So, you know, what are companies doing now to kind of up their game in terms of retention? I mean, it can't be all money, right? Like, salary compensation is important, but you know, it's more to that when it comes to retaining your employees.
Yeah, I think everybody is asking me the most common question: what are the easiest things and fastest things I can do, Bev, for retention?
Yeah.
And I said, well, you need to ask a different question. Some companies are further ahead than others, and you mentioned the tech industry. I think they're leading the pack in responding and being proactive to what employees are demanding right now. Flexibility, interesting work-life balance, work-life balance, remote work. We've gone from, I think, up to 20% in Canada, remote work, from 4 or 5% a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
That's forecasted to be 70% in 2025. So that is not going away, much to the chagrin of some people, but I think most have embraced it. I think actually trying to understand and ask your employees what they're looking for. Listen, you can't keep doing things the way you've always done them. Things have changed. If you keep doing them that way, you will lose people, and you won't get any of the new generation coming in, and you won't keep who you have. So it's...
Well, I found it interesting the other day, you mentioned something like 60% of management in the country now are millennials. And, you know, that's a large group of the workforce who can now really impact systemic change across the system.
Absolutely.
And, you know,
they're driving it.
And they're going to drive, and if it's not going to meet their satisfactions, they're going to go somewhere else.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've talked to more people this year who resigned with no job than I've ever talked to. And the old adage, I need a job to get a job, I've been asked that. Is that still true, Bev? And I would say no, it's not still true. I think that there's been such a change and shift that people are going, okay, so they left and they're not working. That doesn't mean there's something wrong with them.
No, it's
that
almost seen
means,
as brave. As
absolutely.
in some way. That's what I'm hearing.
You followed your heart and your passion, and you're doing what's right for you.
Yeah.
And ultimately, it's an opportunity for the organization to look inward at themselves as well and go, maybe we need to change a few things.
Yeah.
So that's.
But, in the hiring process, I do think that's something that people are concerned about, that if they've had kind of frequent, only stayed in a position for a couple of years at a time, that kind of, that was often seen as not a positive thing in a resume, or if you resigned for a job without having the next one lined up, it was seen as, as irresponsible or whatever. But, so some of those attitudes are changing.
I think so, and even in any organization, you might have, dare I say, some old school attitudes who still ask the question. But I think that is changing because you're seeing all the different generations come up and there's a new world order. I think in terms of the average stint of a resume now is 2 years at any given place. So on any resume we see 7 jobs, and that's boomers. That generation versus the Gen Z coming up, and a combination. So some people have 1 job on their resume or 2 jobs. The younger generation, it's not a carrot anymore to say I'll retire here. And the benefits have changed. Very few companies offer defined benefit programs now. That's not what entices and keeps people generally anymore. These are generalizations, but it's a new world order.
So are employers looking for that kind of dedication to continuing education? Is that something that's looked for when they're seeking new employees?
I think so. I think that's a very good point. I think that the employees are looking for that, and the employers are. So that's actually a fit that's happening, and it's seen as an investment. And the old adage used to be, well, I can't afford to spend that money to invest in an employee. And then,
you can't afford
can
not
you
to.
not afford to? Because if you don't invest in their education and their continuing professional development, what have you as an organization got in 5 years' time? Someone who hasn't grown and hasn't kept the pace with the market and with the environment.
So often, you have years where, you have 3 big brains go out the door, and so much knowledge can be lost.
The corporate history, the succession planning has been talked about for years, and everybody knows it. Everyone knows the buzzwords. It's much harder to implement in real life because where employers, I think, are always a little bit hesitant is if I tell you, Lynn, that you're going to be the next CEO, and 3 years from now things change and you're not for whatever reason, they're a little bit hesitant of that. But there's ways to do it. There's ways to do it so that the employee stays engaged and that the person stays engaged. And there's no hard and fast commitments in many cases, but you're both working towards the same thing. So something might change in your life and you no longer want that, and something might change at the company. But the conversations need to be had and not when somebody's walking out the door.
I read something interesting on LinkedIn this morning, and it said that, if your team has managed itself for the last 6 months and you're looking for a manager, perhaps you should be looking to promote from within. And, because often sometimes there's this idea that someone from the outside is better, or, someone from away is better, or something different is better. But, especially in a market where it's difficult to, identify those new employees, are people looking more within?
I think that most companies always are looking within, but I think what happens a lot, and when I start a new search with a client or I'm just talking to colleagues, I'll always say, do you have somebody internally? Because what a resource, and internal people should be treated more special, for lack of a better term. And I find what happens is that you don't know the skill sets of your internal staff. You know what they applied for, you know what you've seen them do. And as we go through our search and interview screening process, it's not unusual for me to say, do you know that Susan has this in her background, and before she came here, she did this, and this is exactly what you're looking for. So let's talk about that. And I think there's a little bit of inherent bias sometimes because you know what the person has done, excuse me, but you don't know what they're capable of in all cases. The job of a leader or a manager has become very difficult over this pandemic. It's easy to manage and I joked with you the other day when bums are in the seat and you can see what they're doing. It's harder to manage when everyone's sitting at their desks in their house and you don't know exactly what they're doing. You have to talk to them. You have to set goals. You have to check in. You have to make sure they're engaged. That's a lot of work to add to your day job. And I think in terms of internal promotions and succession planning, a little bit more investment would probably pay dividends. Because sometimes there is this shiny thing from the outside, the devil you know. The devil you know versus the devil you don't know is not necessarily something that people look at in recruiting. And I'm being facetious there. But it's worth looking internally. It's worth making the effort and talking to the individual. As an employee, don't assume people know that you want to do something different. And you have to basically speak up and say, I want the next promotion. I'm interested in this. It would amaze you how many people don't say that. So it's a big surprise if they run a job search and somebody applies. Wow, I didn't know they would even be interested. That's more often than the opposite, actually.
Interesting, interesting. So when we come back after the break, I really want to talk about diversity inclusion.
Perfect.
You know, such
my favorite topic.
I know. Such, you know, one that we both certainly recognize the importance of it. So I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
We'll be right back after these messages.
It all started when I racked up some serious debt. Interest payments were going up, creditors were calling. Janes and Noseworthy came up with a plan. Knowing that the phone was going to stop ringing and that I was not in this alone was a huge relief. Bankruptcy or a consumer proposal or whatever help you get is not the end. It's just the beginning. A chance to start again with knowledge and support and people in your corner. Are you ready? Get out of debt. It's okay.
Learn more about Leah's story at janesnoseworthy.ca.
Nicole Martin, the proud ambassador for the Comfort Bear program. Comfort Bears provide these cuddly bears to local children who are terminally ill, facing trauma, or battling a serious illness. Every $20 donation will place a Comfort Bear into the loving arms of a child involved in our program. It is our hope to distribute 1,000 bears in 2022. Please join us and provide comfort to kids in their time of need.
Welcome back. And of course, I'm chatting with Bev Evans of Knightsbridge, Robertson, Surrette. So I think, I can't even remember how we had originally met, but I'm thinking it was around women in leadership, some of those types of luncheons and things. And, certainly women have been significantly impacted by the pandemic. A lot of talk and articles online, about, the challenges for women with, trying to balance at home and kids going to school.
Absolutely.
And, so many other things. What's the statistics around that? I mean, not necessarily the actual numbers, but, in your field, what are you hearing?
As you would expect, women have been disproportionately impacted by COVID. I think the latest stats, I'm trying to remember, 66 or 77% of women have been impacted some way in the workforce. The pandemic has affected women in their thought process of what's important. It's impacted men and women, but still to a greater extent women. More women have left the workforce as a result of the pandemic because they still carry the lion's share of the housework, educating the kids in school, because schooling's happening on the side, and still trying to deliver on the same goals they delivered when
And
they were
often-
working in the office.
And often caring for elderly parents.
Absolutely.
You know, and others in the family who might be immune compromised or, you know, facing other types of challenges due to COVID. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that caregiver weight has certainly increased.
And you know, it's interesting because all of this is happening to make it a perfect storm at the time when a lot of organizations are starting to understand the importance of diversity and inclusion in their organization. At the leadership table, it actually, you know, the cold, cool, reformed CFO in me, it actually increases profitability. It's been proven.
Yes.
Plus a diversity of thought. So at the same time as women are leaving the workforce and stepping back, more organizations actually want them at the table and are at different levels of the continuum to try and get a more balanced picture sitting at the senior leadership table or just throughout their organization.
And we've really seen, you know, especially over the last 10 years, that recognition by companies that this is something that they must do.
Absolutely.
You know, there's an expectation, whether, you know, if they're in non-governmental organizations, you know, it's an expectation of funding. For publicly traded companies, you know, there's clearly an expectation there. It's something that companies have to meet.
Absolutely.
And it goes far beyond just putting it in their value statement or, you know, in their policies. You know, they have to start, and many have, walking the walk.
Absolutely.
But it was interesting. We had a conversation the other day about a company that, you know, was really looking, you know, in their, they felt that they were, but they haven't all necessarily made that transition to real implementation. And, you know, so I guess, I mean, there's a lot of companies are in a big range of positions right now. But
there's a
big learning going on in the last 2 years.
Big learning. There's a continuum on the implementation to change your value system, your culture, and it flows through to your policies. And sometimes your policies have to change to force it to go both ways. But it starts at the top in terms of an actual will to make a change in how your company looks and acts. Women generally, I think all genders need and want this, but women are demanding this. And I guess it goes back to the value statement and what we talked about previously. They're responsible for the holistic family, and we're talking about people that are juggling that right now, and just in general, the policies and the culture of your organization needs to live what you're saying on your value statement. So you can't say we want diversity, but we want everybody who's diverse to fit in these policies and this 9-to-5 world we've created all along. We're not going to change anything, but we want you to come in and fit here. That negates the purpose of having diverse individuals in your organization. You're bringing them in, listen to them, understand what diversity means, understand what flexibility means, demonstrate that. And I think that although many are very well-meaning, they don't even see the cognitive dissonance they create as they say, we want diversity, but we want your bum in the seat from 9 to 5, and we want you to follow these policies. I think that people are on the continuum. Some have arrived, some are just starting. But I do really, really see the genuine sincerity in most of our organizations in Newfoundland and Labrador. They want to get there, and they're going there. And some people are doing it in different ways, but I think we will get there.
And it goes right to the job ad.
Absolutely.
You know, I mean, it has to, the job ad has to have the right language. It has to, you know, appear in the right places to make sure that you're getting that diversity of applications.
Absolutely.
Because, I mean, how often do you hear, but we didn't get any diversity in our application process? Well, maybe you need to go back and look at your application process. So, I mean, I'm sure that's something you're quite familiar with as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we do passive and active recruiting. So passive recruiting is putting out ads and seeing who comes in. And there's actually a job ad decoder floating around, and you can put it in and see if your ad speaks to male or female.
Oh, interesting.
So there's all these tools out there, and there's some typical terms that are supposed to appeal to males versus females. So we're very careful that we don't do that. Also, as when we headhunt or network, whatever the politically correct way of saying that is now, we're very careful to look in a broad, diverse mediums and venues. So we will go to some of the not typically thought of organizations and say, you know, this is what we're looking for, let's talk about it. So you have to look, it's effort. It's not easy anymore. And I think it was easy when you had 3 people for every job. Now you have 1 person for every 3 persons retiring or leaving. The economics have changed. Supply and demand have changed. So we've got to do some things different.
And I mean, imagine, you know, being kind of, it's an employee's market right now, isn't it?
I say that, and it strikes fear in many hearts. And I've said I have never seen this since I've been doing this, and I think it's my colleagues across the country are saying the same thing. So it is a good time. Even though some people don't feel like that when I talk to them, I think it is a candidates or employees market, and I think that everybody wants the same thing. Some people are taking longer to get there on the employer side, but I think their hearts and their minds are on it, and they're working towards it.
Always a pleasure to see you, and you know, I certainly appreciate your insights today, and I'm sure those at home did as well.
Thank you very much, Lynn. Always a pleasure.
We'll be back after these messages.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
Well, I always learn something new when I spend time with Bev Evans. I hope you enjoyed our conversation, and I'm sure you learned something new too. Join us next time on Out of the Fog.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.
The clock is ticking. If you only help them, then I will.
I can't be 2 things at once, Claire. A rebel, a loyalist.